start the recording?
It has started already.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so in just next 45 minutes, I'm going to discuss the case studies, a few case studies related to public policy. But while doing so, I'll also be giving a kind of a background to public policy. And I will also be telling something where we can think of applying AI techniques of various kinds to, in different stages of public policy design up to the final impact assessment. So, like when you talk about public policy, as you all know, it's something that is designed by the government, meant for the public. So it doesn't exclude, or it doesn't intentionally exclude any specific group if it is eligible for the benefit or for the program. It is a kind of, you can say in a sense, it is also a public good. If it is meant for a specific group, every single entity in that group will be eligible to avail of the benefits. So, and when it comes to theories to design the public policy, to see the efficacy and effectiveness of the public policy, there are no such coherent theories which can explain how the government should or could intervene in the most efficient or the effective manner. Rather, what has been done over time, though there are theories to guide various public policies, rather in most of the instances what have happened is that there have been hit and trial, or it is by analogy with other policies or programs, something which is there in some other countries. For example, suppose we talk about food security policy, it is there in some other countries, we adopt that particular program. If you see, that program has been successful in some similar environment, though it doesn't have a theory to support it. If we talk about even the Grameen Bank model, which was adopted first in Bangladesh, we then came up with our own model, having seen the success of the Grameen Bank model in Bangladesh. Then we came up with our own model as well, which was, which had to look into our own local conditions. And in course of time, we have evolved, we have come up with various models within the microfinance framework. Many a time, we also design the public policies which are based upon intuition. So, having said all that, when it comes to public policy, it has a change cycle. And here comes in the role of the AI that we talk about. At every single step of the public policy framework, we possibly have a scope to see the application of the AI techniques. Like when we talk about, here I present a generic model, then I shall talk about certain specific public policies that Government of India has formulated over the last few years. So if you talk about the generic model of the public policy, it has the following chains. The chain cycle. The first aspect of the public policy is to design, is to set the objectives, set the needs of such a public policy. And those needs and objectives are to be realistic, must be based upon the requirements of the people at large, having certain specific goals to achieve. Like for example, when you come up with a poverty alleviation program, we know who the target population is, who the people are who are below poverty line, and within that group who are extremely poor, who are borderline poor, or maybe who are non-poor. When I say non-poor, maybe there are people who are just above the poverty line, but they are actually not rich. So, keeping in mind the needs of the different such groups, we set the objectives of a public policy like poverty alleviation program. Then the inputs required to achieve or set, the inputs that you need to have in place to achieve the objectives. So those inputs could be the funds required to undertake the project, how much is the fund required, how diverse the scheme would be, how expansive the scheme would be. That would decide the funds to be required. And here you can apply the predictive models to find out if the targeted population would increase its size over time at a particular rate, then how much would be the fund requirement in the days to come. And what even the population size itself is also dynamic, whether you can predict each category of population, each section of population separately, or it is for the entire population. That is again something we need to consider, because like the people below poverty line or the people belonging to a particular community, their growth rate could be different from the people belonging to other community. So given the requirements, given the target, you need to see how much would be what would be the extent of rise in population in each group, and then how much would be the intervention required, and accordingly the funds are to be earmarked. But fund is just one kind of an input. Even you need to also have other requirements to be put in place, like you'll have to also make the manpower ready to undertake the project. What kind of manpower is required to undertake a particular project or undertake a particular scheme? Like for example, when you talk about MGNREGA, Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Act, we have initially, this was a part of the design of this particular scheme, wherein we thought of having a robust MIS at the village level itself, at the panchayat level itself. And in course of time, we started recruiting management professionals to take care of the implementation of the scheme. So to make the manpower ready for this particular scheme, so that it is effectively implemented, that again is another kind of an input that you need to estimate. And similarly, there could be other inputs as well. Then comes the process of implementing the scheme, the process of floating the scheme. What are the different steps? Who are the different stakeholders to be involved in the implementation of the scheme? Like if you talk about Manrega, that MGNREGA, starting from the central government down to the panchayat level functionaries, we have different stakeholders at different levels who are assigned certain responsibilities to in course of implementing the scheme. Then there are the end beneficiaries. They are also the stakeholders. So, but then who these different stakeholders are, what are their defined responsibilities, how the scheme is to be implemented, how to select the beneficiaries, or how to identify the beneficiaries. We have already said that these would be the beneficiaries, but then how to really identify? There comes in errors. We have come across many such schemes which have failed because of the selection bias. We have failed to identify the intended beneficiaries. In many such schemes, we have seen there is a possibility of there have been cases of elite capture. The people who are not supposed to be a part of the scheme have been beneficiaries. The intended beneficiaries have been left out. So how to identify the beneficiaries? But while identifying the beneficiaries, as it has happened in the case of National Food Security Act, because you did not have the mechanisms to identify the true beneficiaries, what we did, we rolled out the scheme for about 75% of the total population in the rural areas. Why I raise this point? You know that when we talk about Food Security Act, we know that according to Planning Commission's report, only, Planning Commission's last report, where it was estimated that the total poverty in the country is 21.9%, or suppose 22%, around 22%. Though that is debatable. But even if you debate on that, you cannot say it will be 50%. But then why a scheme was rolled out for 75% of the rural people and 50% of the urban people? Is it that these many people are below poverty line? Do they need food grains at subsidized prices, just 1 rupee or 2 rupees or 3 rupees per kg, depending upon the kinds of food grains we are talking about? Or it was done just to keep in mind, just to avoid the possibility of selection bias, just to avoid the possibility of ignoring the intended beneficiaries. Though in the process you might add of many who should not have been a part of the scheme. So possibly here comes in the role of the AI to find out how to identify the intended beneficiary, so that this public money, that this particular scheme which has been rolled out, NFSA, National Food Security Act, we are spending lakhs of crores of rupees on this particular scheme. This could have been a part of this money could have been utilized towards education, funding educational programs or some other programs, health and other infrastructure we could have built. But because we have failed to, or we have been failing to identify the proper beneficiaries, we have rolled out a scheme and we justify that by telling that this benefits a large section of the population. But possibly we need to identify who the real poor are. So there comes in the process, one important aspect, one step in the process is to identify the beneficiaries. And so on. Then comes these are the three first steps before the project is implemented, before any scheme is implemented. We need to identify the objectives, and each scheme has its own objectives, has its own approach. Then the inputs to feed this particular scheme. Then the process to be followed to implement the scheme. These are all to be done before the project is implemented. But the project has its own targets to derive certain desired output, outcomes, and impacts. But these three are not same. The output could be the means to achieve the outcomes, as you know, and when you talk about the difference between outcomes and output, it could be the means to achieve the outcomes. So the output could be like, suppose you say that IIT Kharagpur increases the number of seats for at the undergraduate level or at the postgraduate level, or it increases the number of seats for women. So this is the mandate of the government that you'll have to do this. So when you achieve this, or when you increase the number of seats, you achieve the output. You have the output in hand. It is the immediate output you are getting out of the scheme. Then the outcome is something which is measurable, that you targeted to achieve through this. The purpose was to increase women's enrollment. You wanted to make them empowered. You wanted to see that they are found in all spheres of activities. So So the output resulted in the outcome, which is measurable, and there are certain specific outcomes you had also targeted in the very beginning while designing the program, and it is short term in nature. But each single scheme we talk about has a long term goal that is achieved, that is measured through the impact assessment, which could also consider the outcome, but it is much beyond that. It is just not that you make women empowered, but what other things you are achieving through that. It's just not that you ensure that more women are found in different economic activities, but through that what other things you are achieving for the society, for the economy at large. That is the impact. So any single public policy you talk about has to pass through all these different stages, starting from designing, keeping in mind the objectives, the approach to undertake the scheme, to finally making an impact assessment. And possibly at every stage of the public policy design, implementation, and finally assessment, we may apply AI techniques. And then, as you can see here, there is something that I have mentioned on this phase diagram. There is something called cost effective analysis, and then the other one is cost benefit analysis. These two are not exactly, they are not same. One could be something which is done before the project is implemented, before the scheme is undertaken, the cost effectiveness analysis, where there could be certain effects you target, may not be always monetarily measurable, but here what is important is to have a relative, there are different alternative interventions possible on the part of the government. The government will see which intervention would be more cost effective. So on a relative scale, you are trying to see, given the effects, so it is a ratio of the cost to the effects that you get. Whereas in case of benefit is more, it's more concretely measurable. It comes in various forms, both direct and indirect benefits. So here it is like, even many a time we talk about benefit cost ratio rather than measuring cost benefit ratio. So we take benefit to the numerator to find out the ratio, and that has to be positive so that we undertake the scheme, otherwise not. It depends on, it may not always apply to all kinds of schemes, because many government schemes may not need to apply a benefit cost kind of an analysis. What is more important for them, for the government schemes to look into, is the cost effectiveness analysis. Benefit cost analysis is more applicable to the company projects, where you target the profit and all that. But even then, these days, as an impact assessment tool, benefit cost analysis is also carried out even in government programs. And when it comes to public policy analysis, we may have to see, or may have to apply multi-method criteria rather than going for only one method or one criteria. We may have to apply both quantitative and qualitative tools. It may not be always possible on our part to capture all the different effects quantitatively by just using quantitative tools, what economists usually do. So, but then the qualitative tools are also important. So we need to see how we can have a blend of the two, so that we can measure truly how much is the impact on different segments or different targeted groups. It should be also multidisciplinary in nature. It should not be, as we are doing now, it is AI for economics we are talking about, so that we are bringing into disciplines, and so it should be more than one discipline which should be brought together, because in our typical economic analysis, what we always do when it comes to public policy analysis, we use some empirical tools, which is basically, you can say, maybe some regression tools or some benefit cost analysis tools, or some treatment control group kind of tools like propensity score matching and all that. But there are other tools which may be AI based, that can also help us analyze the public policy in a much better way. That usually economists do not do until we have introduced, or have not done until we have introduced this AI into the field of economics. It should be problem focused. I mean, the problems are to be predefined. What exactly are the problems that you need to know? I mean, like for example, you will have to identify the beneficiaries. We'll have to see that there are no leakages. So these problems are already predefined, then only you would be able to apply the tools accordingly. Mapping the context, we need to go for a context mapping, and then we may have many options and many effects, just not one option or one effect. We may have many options and many effects, and so a comprehensive study may be desirable than only targeting one particular effect or impact of a scheme. Just I would now highlight two different schemes, which are two major public policies Government of India has introduced over the last 15 years or so. One was Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Act. It was introduced in 2005. It is one of the largest employment programs ever introduced in our country, and possibly one of the largest in the world. So what has gone into this, and what can be done using AI to address all the different aspects of this particular scheme? And then I shall discuss about NFSA at another one. So if we look at MGNREJ, it is a legally guaranteed scheme. It is a right-based scheme wherein we have assured 100 days of employment to the eligible households for years. A job card is issued to the eligible household, to each eligible household, and each eligible household is entitled to get. It is an entitlement scheme. Unlike earlier schemes, this is a demand-based scheme. Whosoever demands the job will be given the job. Unlike earlier wage employment scheme like we had Jawahar Rozgar Yojana, this is different, where it is right-based, it is demand-based, where whosoever demands has to be given employment. The background, if you talk about the background of this scheme, I mean, because we are looking into the design of this scheme until the final impact. Rural development has been the major focus of this particular scheme. And it aims to absorb underemployed and surplus labor force in the rural sector. That is the basic objective, or the basic background based on which this scheme was designed. And it also aimed to ensure at least some minimum days of employment, as I already said, and it is manual. So this is a scheme under which no machine can be applied in various economic activities. It is a well-defined scheme with well-defined guidelines where no deviation is permissible. No contractor can participate in undertaking this activity in this particular any project under this particular scheme. As I said, the objective is to enhance the livelihood security of the poor households in the rural areas. Now even we are talking about urban Manrega as well. And the approach to this, to implement this scheme, is that the state government shall provide to every poor household guaranteed employment. It is the responsibility of the state government. The scheme is centrally designed, but the responsibility of implementing this scheme lies with the state government. and it is also implemented after the legislation is passed. It is an act of the parliament. And the wage rate is specified by the central government, or there is a minimum wage rate which is fixed by each state government on a regular interval. We keep changing the minimum wage rates. So that is to be guaranteed to all. You cannot pay less than the minimum wage. So what is the process of implementing this scheme? The people who would like to get employed under MGNREGA will have to apply. They will submit their applications. I mean, they have already got the job cards. All the eligible households receive the job cards first. Each household is entitled to get 100 days of employment. Then, once they have received the job card, they can apply for jobs. Within 15 days, they have to be given the job. If they are not given the job, then unemployment allowance has to be paid by the state government. It is not to be paid by the central government. It is obligatory on the part of the state government to pay unemployment allowance to the person who has asked for the job. When it comes to implementation, there are different agents involved in the implementation of the scheme, starting from the Central Employment Guarantee Council, which is at the central level. There is a State Employment Guarantee Council. Then there is panchayats. There are district level coordinators. There are state level. There are block level coordinators. There are program coordinators. So at every level, there are people. There are agents working with certain assigned responsibilities to implement the scheme. When it comes to decision making, the choosing the beneficiaries, who would choose the beneficiaries? The government or the government agents are responsible to choose the beneficiaries. There lies the biggest problem. Identification of the beneficiaries. So whether we identify the intended beneficiaries or not. So there comes in applying proper techniques to find out who the real beneficiaries are or who the intended beneficiaries should be. Then the choice of employment. It is the people who decide where to work and where not to work, and they participate also. When it comes to, there is something called Gram Sabha, where the projects are designed, projects are passed, which projects are to be undertaken in different villages. And then the people to work and all that all the choices are left to the people to decide what kind of works they will carry out, what kind of projects they will undertake in their own areas, and then who will work and who will not work, that is left to the people. So not necessarily that the person who has got the job card would be forced to work in a particular project. It is their choice whether they will work or they will not work. And this is also another area of concern, because as it is reported that people are not demanding works under this particular scheme. Though 100 days of employment are guaranteed, even we don't reach 50 days of employment on the average. What are the problems or the gaps we are experiencing? As I have already said, we have beneficiaries who are not supposed to have been selected. There is inappropriate selection of beneficiaries. There are reported cases of elite capture. People who are not supposed to have been under the scheme because there are certain criteria to exclude or include the households. But then there are many households who are not falling under the criteria. They have captured the scheme. They have grabbed the these opportunities, have become the beneficiaries. there is corruption in terms of, at various levels, in terms of be it the waste dispersal, when it comes to disbursing waste to the workers who are working, or even maintaining MIS, reporting days of employment, providing employment, providing unemployment allowance. That means an application has been submitted, but then report is not, that record is not maintained, and then a person doesn't get unemployment allowance, even if 15 days have already elapsed. Inappropriate allocation of employment to the beneficiary, that in a sense you can say it is one of the leakages under the scheme. And there are also reported cases of delays in waste disbursement. And one major challenge is the micro level data is not available as much as the scheme claims or scheme intends to achieve under this particular scheme. Though the data set is quite large, there are lots of things which can be done with this large data set, because it is individual level data that we are creating on a daily basis. Even then, there are many missing links, even in the data procurement and data generation and all that. And then there are also reported cases of distress migration, despite the fact that we have introduced this particular scheme. So here, possibly I am not the right person to comment on the AI techniques, what kind of techniques you can apply. PPC sir is here, and I mean they're all other faculty members who are going to teaching this, rather who are teaching this. They will tell you, or they might have been telling you, that possibly to avoid these issues of elite capture and overcome the problems of the wrong beneficiary selection, maybe we need to have a facial recognition or biometric identification. And then when it comes to some other kinds of issues related to the certain areas and all that, we can think of having hotspot analysis and all that, and progress monitoring. So similar to one public welfare scheme which government has introduced since 2005, yet another scheme was launched in 2013, that was National Food Security Act. This is a scheme, as I have said earlier, this is a scheme under which eligible households are provided 5 kg of food grains per person at a subsidized price. The objective is to provide or to make everybody food secure. So it is again a right-based scheme in a sense, you can say, because it has also been passed as an act in the parliament. It is what is done over here, that all the entitled households receive food grains at subsidized prices. And these households are a part of the targeted public distribution system, TPDS, what you say. And along with provision of food grains, we also like to ensure that there is nutritional support to pregnant women and new mothers, and also nutritional support to children. All the earlier schemes of the government were merged to create one scheme, and that has been named as National Food Security Act. There are earlier schemes for the children, school-going children and all that, you know, that there are schemes, and also for the pregnant women we had some other schemes, and all these schemes have been merged into one, and it is implemented in a more coordinated way, and the objective is to make everybody food secure and nutrition secure. The approach is to ensure that this scheme reaches to the eligible households who are entitled for this benefit, and The food grains are provided at subsidized prices not exceeding 3 rupees per kg for rice, 2 rupees for wheat and 1 rupee for coarse grains. And as I said, 5 kg of food grains per person per month at a subsidized price. But particularly for the households belonging to Antyodaya Yojana, which is a Antyodaya Anna Yojana, which is for the poorest of the poor families. The amount of food grains would exceed 20. In the other case, it is 25 kg for all other eligible households. But for AAY, that is Antyodaya Anna Yojana, it is 35 kgs. The scheme is implemented following the coverage of the population under the TPDS, the Targeted Public Distribution System. We have, under the Targeted Public Distribution System, we have identified the households to be eligible. State governments are asked to prepare the guidelines to identify the priority households. And there is a state commission which prepares the list of the households to implement the scheme for them. Again here, choosing the beneficiaries again lies with the government and government agents. I mean, when I talk about government agents, it also includes the elected representatives, including the sarpanch and panchayat samiti members and all those people who are elected representatives who represent the panchayats. Whereas the choice of nutrition and food is left to the public, whether they would prefer rice or wheat or coarse grain, that is left to the households. Again, here also we come across cases of wrong selection of beneficiaries. There are even if there are 75% households covered, there are reported cases of elite capture even here beyond 75%. There are reported cases of corruption of all different kinds, and there is a peculiar problem we are coming across, that is about the in-kind transfer which this particular scheme promotes versus what people expect from the government as a transfer. Many people are in favor of cash transfers rather than the in-kind transfers. But this particular scheme is meant for in-kind transfer. That means we are giving food grains rather than giving the cash equivalent. So this is an area which is being debated, and here when it comes to identifying, coming up with the cash transfer thing, so you'll have to see that how dynamic that scheme should be, because when you talk about cash transfer, it has its own advantages and also disadvantages. The advantage could be that the people are they can utilize the cash for the purpose for which they feel like utilizing, not necessarily for food grains only. They might not like to have the inferior food which is being given, food grains which are being given to them. Possibly they would rather buy some superior food grains from the market. But then government pays them or would pay them at a price which would not be market driven. So it would not be market linked. So then the cash transfer may not be beneficial to the households. And then there are many other issues as far as the banking infrastructure is concerned, and the extent of financial inclusion we have achieved, the role of different correspondents we have created, the banking correspondents and business correspondents we have created, the different kinds of we have many intermediaries in between, how robust that system is to take care of the cash transfer. That is very important. Otherwise, our in-kind transfer has been already very robust. But there is a huge demand these days in favor of the cash transfer. There is the economists are divided. Many people are in favor of cash transfer, though there are people who are equally, pleading for or advocating for the in-kind transfer. Thus, here again, as because there are possibilities of the wrong selection of beneficiaries and so on, again here some AI techniques can be applied. Similarly, other than these two policies, which in fact I have been working, I thought that I'd share some such, what exactly are the approaches we are following, what are the objectives, what are the challenges we have at every level, at each level of the implementation of the scheme. Can you apply any AI techniques? But then that, as I said, that there can be several public policies, not limited to only food or to employment. It can be even health, it can be environment, it can be a public policy for the cities, like smart city project is a public policy by itself, or it can be even redressal of crimes like in cities. So you have a public policy for that, the monitoring mechanisms that you come up with, the robust policing that you would be creating around the cities. All those are also public policy measures that government undertakes. So for each such thing, there is a possibility of implementing the public AI tools possibly. I will not discuss this. This is yet another thing. Environmental policy. I'll just end my talk on by just presenting here just 1.5 slides, rather just 1 or 2 or 3 cases rather. One is about public health. I talked about education, employment, and this food grain distribution. Then there are other areas of public policy intervention. One is public health. Another is air quality, which is basically an environmental issue. And the third one, which I would like to talk about, is the tax obligation. Suppose these 3 I would like to highlight. Like when it comes to public health, as you know that we have a lot to do in the public health domain. Possibly here we have a lot to do through the through the intervention of the AI. AI has to be there, has to be has to be applied to find solutions to all different issues related to public health. So agenda setting could be that the patients now expect service of the highest standard. So that's the agenda. And also along with that, they need to see that there is quality in all aspects of their lives. So policy formulation and decision making would require analyzing the risk of getting sick by means of some kind of an algorithm with clinical, demographic, laboratory, and behavioral data. All these data are to be collected. And we can apply some or create some predictive analysis to make informed decisions regarding this public health issue. Then recognizing policy implementation would be to recognize the geographic pattern of the spread of the disease. Suppose any disease you talk about, suppose you talk about COVID-19 today, as you know that there are several studies that have been carried out using AI to find out the geographic spread of the disease and even predicting how it is going to behave in the days to come. And then the result should be to undertake precautionary measures. And here, the artificial intelligence techniques can be applied where you have big data. Data set can also be very large in many cases. That can be. It is possible that you can get a large data set, and the tools and techniques that you can apply could be data mining and machine learning tools and all that. Similarly, air quality, I will not take time because as I was told that I'll have to stick to my time. I'm 45 minutes, and there would be some other discussions, and maybe I'll take some questions if you have anything. Tax obligation is a very important issue where we see many tax evaders. Can there be a technique we can apply to identify the tax evaders. Government has tried with many techniques. It has failed to find out the tax evaders. So possibly it is a food for thought. What technique can you apply so that you can identify the tax evaders, so that the tax compliance increases? Or can we come up with some kind of a mechanism so that tax compliance improves in the country? So with this, I'll stop. If you have any questions, I'll take your questions. Otherwise, I'll leave it to Sayantan to share the other things that he wanted to share in today's class.
Professor Nayak, I have one question. Is currently is any kind of AI or ML technique used for impact assessment for any any of the policies being used in India or any other country?
Yeah, I got your point, but the thing is that I have hardly found out any such study where AI techniques have been used. Sometimes people are using like some predictive models, but then not in the impact assessment. Not in the impact assessment. Rather, they are, sometimes, in order to predict what would happen, they have used some, like, again, whether you will say neural network is a AI technique. And if you consider that, then people are using neural network as a predictive model. But I have not come across any such study where people have already used AI techniques.
And any particular example where you have seen neural networks being used as a predictive technique in this context, in the context of policy designing or public policy planning?
Like suppose, say, even not just this, and I don't remember something to cite here in the context of the two schemes I talked about. But suppose environment. Let me talk about environment. Like as you do, like environmental policy design also requires the proper prediction about the environmental occurrences. Suppose I talk about this cyclonic occurrences. So we have done. In fact, one of my students is working on this, and we have done it on the tropical cyclones to find out even in a particular year. I mean, for the next 50 years, we have made a prediction using the ANN. We have tried all. I mean, we have tried linear model, we have tried nonlinear model, we have tried a hybrid model, and we found that the ANN came out to be a better predictive model in the context of predicting the cyclone occurrences. So when it comes to public policy design, if you are able to accurately predict the cyclones, you could possibly be making an intervention at the right time. Okay. And this has become very important these days because cyclones have the intensity and the frequency has increased like anything over the last few years.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Okay, I got it. Thank you.
Abhay, in many cases, the bank repo rate, which is the rate at which the bank decides on certain repo rates and whatever it is which the banks do for lending and borrowing, that has got a lot of data, because from that you have got a lot of patterns coming out in terms of the production, in terms of export, in terms of import and things like that. So there are ways in which we can do this. I'm not aware of exact works, but I think if we identify some of the policies which are in terms of increasing, decreasing slabs, for example, tax slabs, incentive slabs, and things like that, I think there is a lot of data. I'm not sure who has done that work, but that is definitely a very good this one. There has been some work on Manrega versus water table. What has happened to our water tables and Manrega? So that sort of work has been done. That Manrega, which is this 100 days work, and the water levels of the country, there has been some pattern found in terms of wherever Manrega was more effectively used and certain things were not done, there the water table going down has actually improved.
Okay. Okay.
What's just PPC said was telling, in fact, one major goal of Manrega is to create 100 days of employment, but it has a supplementary goal or complementary goal rather, that it creates a number of durable rural assets. And those rural assets, one such thing is the ponds, the dog wells, excavation of ponds in various places. And what Sadhu was just telling, that has resulted in, there have been studies that has resulted in increase in the water table in various parts of the country.
Okay.
If there are no questions, I think Sayantan was supposed to announce something. I think Sayantan, you are there?
Yes, sir.
So,
am I audible, sir?
Yes, yes.
Okay. So, students, yesterday I've sent one mail. Also, I posted that message in our channel, MS Teams. So we have to pick up the problem statement for assignment 1. So far in the class, there are several problems in the area of economics were discussed, and their solutions also have been discussed by our faculty member. So it should come from your side that you should choose one problem statement, and I have prepared one Google Doc file. The link is shared in that mail also and in the MS Teams also. So please fill up that Google Doc file as soon as possible.
Sayantan, hello.
Yes, yes.
This is Niladri. If you
Yes,
can
yes.
present the Google Doc here, it will be better, I think.
Okay, okay. Sure, I'm doing it.
Naik, you can stop sharing if possible.
I think
Okay,
it is
I'm
removed.
sharing. Is it visible?
Yes, visible.
So this is that.
No, the sheet is not has not come. Open the sheet.
No, it will come. It will come. Yes. So this is that doc file that you have to fill up, where you have to fill your name, roll number, email ID, and the problem statement that you want to work for this course, and it will be considered as assignment 1 of module 1. So as soon as possible, if you can fill up this Google Doc file, so that the question, that problem statement will be fixed. So this is it. I think all of you have received that mail, and you can access this link. If you have any problem, you can tell me. Okay. So this Google Doc, you have to fill it up. Nilatikda, anything else?
I just want to ask PPC sir one thing. If we can add another column, just to mention what AI techniques the student is thinking to apply for that particular problem statement. If that can be done, I think.
Yeah, that's all right. They can, the problem statement, when they write the statement, they can mention it in the statement itself.
Okay.
It would better have been done by a Google form. They could have just filled up a Google form and it would have automatically gone. This one sheet, who will update, who will write, who will erase, who's write up. Anyway, if this is done, it's fine. The students, and another thing is, have you all finalized what time on Saturday we will have class?
Yes, sir. I had put up a poll on the group, like on the Teams. So there have been approximately 28 votes till now, out of which more than 80% have voted for 2 to 4 p.m.
Okay,
And the other
so
option was 5.
we are finalizing 2 to 4. You make the announcement, and I'll also tell tomorrow that we'll
Yes.
do it from 2 to 4. Tomorrow, our normal class is there from 5 to 6, which will be taken 50% by Professor Naik and 50% by me. And then on Saturday, from 2 to 4, we will have a class. Thank you.
I had a doubt. Can I ask?
For Professor Naik, na? Or for me, or for whom? You asked
It's
now.
like about, yes, sir. It's about the assignment. Like we have to choose the problem statement, but as it was mentioned by the professors earlier, that whichever area or whichever professor's area is the project under, like the question under, they'll guide us. So
Yes.
would we be guided, or would we have to like complete the assignment on our own?
No. Once you give the problem statement, then we will engage with you and do something.
Okay, thank you, sir.
First, identify your problem statement, and then somebody will engage with
you. Okay, that's first my doubt. Thank you, sir.
The recording can be stopped, Shanta.